never imagined the end of my marriage would come with an audience. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. When Thomas and I first met, I was a shy, idealistic graduate student, and he was the golden boy of the law school. Charming, brilliant, magnetic. He swept me off my feet in a whirlwind of late-night debates, candlelit dinners, and whispered promises about the life we'd build together. I believed him. I believed in us. For 12 years, I built my world around Thomas. I worked 2 jobs while he clerked for a judge, supported him through law school, moved wherever his career demanded, and even put aside my own dreams of teaching to keep our home running smoothly. When Thomas made partner at his firm, we were supposed to celebrate, but something in him had already shifted. The distance grew slowly, almost imperceptibly. Late nights at the office became routine. His phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now locked with a passcode. Vacations were cancelled. Our anniversary dinner ended with him answering a call mid-toast and leaving me alone at the table. But the worst part wasn't the infidelity I suspected. It was the erosion of respect. By the time Thomas told me he wanted a divorce, he didn't even look at me. "Claire, this isn't working," he said, eyes glued to his phone, thumbs flicking across the screen. "Let's just be adults about this." I sat in the chair across from him, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear. "Thomas, what's going on?" "Who?" "I've already spoken to the lawyers," he interrupted. "There's no need to drag this out." And just like that, 12 years vanished. But what I didn't know then was that Thomas wasn't just leaving me. He was preparing to bury me. The weeks that followed were a nightmare. Thomas froze our joint accounts, canceled my credit cards, and moved into the penthouse apartment we were supposed to buy together. His lawyers filed motions making me out to be a gold digger, a dependent wife who had contributed nothing, who deserved nothing. The whispers started almost immediately. Friends stopped calling. His colleagues looked at me with pity if they looked at me at all. Even my parents, conservative and pragmatic, urged me to accept the settlement and move on with dignity. What none of them knew was that Thomas had miscalculated one thing. I wasn't as naive as I looked. It started with the black box on my bookshelf. Months before the divorce, on a stormy night when Thomas came home drunk and muttering to himself, I had seen a flash of something I wasn't supposed to see. He slumped on the couch, laughing softly, whispering into his phone. And then, as if testing how far he could go, he poured himself another drink and began talking out loud. About offshore accounts, about hidden assets, about how easy it was to make me look like a fool. That night, heart pounding, I grabbed the old digital recorder I used for interviews during grad school and slipped it under the couch cushion. I recorded everything. For months I kept that recorder hidden. I didn't know what I would do with it, until the first legal notice arrived at my door, claiming I was entitled to minimal spousal support because of my limited contributions. Rage can do strange things to a person. Made me fearless. I hired Sophie Bell, a lawyer whose reputation for dismantling men like Thomas was legendary. She was blunt, sharp, and unapologetically fierce. When I first sat across from her and handed her the recorder, I expected her to laugh or dismiss me. Instead, she played the first 5 minutes, set it down carefully, and smiled. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, "we're going to have some fun." The weeks leading up to the court date were a study in contrasts. Thomas paraded around town with his new girlfriend, a junior associate from his firm, of course, as if nothing in the world could touch him. He sent me mocking texts late at night. "Enjoy your half of the toaster." His lawyers filed motion after motion, trying to delay the proceedings, confident they would grind me down. And yet, every night, as I sat in my tiny rented apartment, I listened to that recording. Every slurred word, every cruel laugh, every admission of theft, fraud, and betrayal was etched into my memory. By the time the court date arrived, I was no longer the woman he'd left behind. I was someone new. The courthouse was a cold, gray building. Fitting, I thought, as I walked up the stone steps, head held high. I wore a navy suit I had bought secondhand and had tailored to fit perfectly. Sophie met me at the entrance, her calm, predatory smile easing my nerves. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Thomas sat at the plaintiff's table, surrounded by his expensive legal team, smirking at me like a man who had already won. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman with a reputation for cutting through theatrics, called the room to order. The first hour passed in a blur of legal arguments. Thomas's lawyers painted me as an entitled housewife, someone who was trying to cash in on a marriage she hadn't invested in. I felt the burn of humiliation, the flush creeping up my neck, but I kept my gaze steady. Finally, it was Sophie's turn. She rose, calm as ever, and began her cross-examination. Methodical, patient, she drew out contradictions, poked holes in their timeline, and established the pattern of financial manipulation. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, his cocky grin wavering. Then Sophie said the words that would change everything. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would like to introduce new evidence." Thomas's head snapped up. For the first time that morning, he looked uncertain. As the recording played, the courtroom transformed. First came the confusion, murmurs from the gallery, shifting in seats. Then the slow, creeping realization as Thomas's voice echoed through the room. Slurred, arrogant, damning. The details were unmistakable. The offshore accounts, the fabricated expenses, the contempt for the woman he claimed to have loved. By the time the recording ended, there was no laughter in the room. The judge's face was stone. Thomas sat frozen, color drained from his face, his lawyers frantically whispering in his ear. I felt the knot of anxiety in my chest unravel for the first time in months. Sophie turned to me, her smile barely concealed, and whispered, "You just changed the game." But this wasn't the end, not yet. Outside the courtroom, as the reporters waited for a statement and Thomas's team scrambled to regroup, I stood at the top of the courthouse steps and realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. For the first time in years, I was free. The days after the hearing were a whirlwind. The media caught wind of the courtroom drama almost immediately. I hadn't anticipated that part. I hadn't expected to see headlines splashed across local papers. Top attorney exposed by wife in divorce bombshell, or to have reporters waiting outside my apartment building. Neighbors peeked from behind their blinds. Old acquaintances I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to grab coffee. But I wasn't interested in fame. I wanted freedom. Thomas, however, was unraveling. He tried to call me 2 days after the recording played in court. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was shaky, no longer the smooth, confident tone I had once known so well. "Claire, we should talk. This is getting out of hand. Call me back." I didn't. Sophie was clear, "Do not engage." Every word from here on out went through her office. That's how I found out that Thomas was now offering settlements. Desperate ones. He went from offering me a generous monthly allowance to offering the house, the car, even shares in his company. But the point was never just about the money. The point was about being seen. For years, I had been invisible in my own marriage. My efforts were background noise to Thomas's rise. Managing the house, making connections at firm dinners, smoothing over his public missteps. He took and I gave, and when he decided he was done, he assumed I would fade away quietly. He was wrong. In court, the tides shifted fast. Sophie filed motions to freeze Thomas's accounts pending investigation. The judge, clearly furious at the evidence of fraud, ordered a full audit of his finances. Thomas's lawyers, once smug and aloof, now scrambled like rats on a sinking ship. At one hearing, I watched Thomas whisper furiously to his lead attorney, face pale, eyes darting toward me across the room. For the first time, he looked afraid. There's a moment you don't expect in a story like this. A moment when you realize you've already won, even before the judge bangs the gavel. For me, that moment came late one afternoon when Sophie leaned across the table and murmured, "He's trying to settle before criminal charges hit." It wasn't just about the divorce anymore. Thomas had embezzled funds not only from me, but from his own firm. His offshore dealings, meant to cut me out, had exposed him to far worse consequences. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my apartment sipping tea, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Emily, the junior associate, the woman Thomas had left me for. She looked wrecked, makeup smeared, eyes swollen, hair tied back in a messy knot. She fidgeted on my doorstep, shifting from foot to foot like a nervous teenager. I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she blurted when I opened the door. For a moment, I just stared at her. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, throwing the door in her face, screaming, demanding to know if she felt any guilt at all. But now, standing there, I only felt an odd kind of detachment. "I didn't know," she whispered, eyes darting to the floor. "He told me you were cold, controlling, that you didn't care about him." She let out a shaky breath. "I thought I was saving him." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "I hope you learn from this," I said quietly. "I really do." And then gently I closed the door. By the time we reached the final court date, the atmosphere was entirely different. The courtroom was packed again, but this time the buzz wasn't about me. It was about him. Thomas arrived flanked by lawyers, but the confident swagger was gone. He looked older, thinner. The tan he had so proudly maintained on weekend getaways with Emily was gone. His shoulders slumped as he slid into his seat, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Sophie and I sat calmly at our table. She glanced at me once, offering a small, knowing smile. As proceedings began, the judge delivered a sharp rebuke, outlining the financial misconduct, the reckless hiding of assets, the unethical behavior. Thomas's lawyers moved quickly to accept a settlement. They wanted to avoid dragging their client into criminal court. I could feel the eyes on me, the spectators, the reporters, the court staff. The woman who was supposed to disappear. The woman Thomas had mocked in his drunken confession. The woman who had arrived with nothing, except the one thing that mattered: evidence. When the judge read the final terms, I felt my heart clench. I was awarded half of Thomas's assets, a significant portion of his firm's profits, and exclusive rights to the house we had once bought together, the house he had promised to build our future in. But more than that, the judge ordered Thomas to pay legal fees and cooperate fully with the financial investigation. His fall was swift. The media devoured the scandal. His firm announced a suspension pending internal review. Emily, I heard, had left the city. And me. I walked out of court that day into the blinding sun, past cameras and microphones, past the murmurs of strangers. My hands were steady. My heart was light. I was free. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life. I moved into a sunlit apartment overlooking the city, something I chose for me. I enrolled in a teaching certification program, a dream I had put on hold for years. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since I was a young woman filled with hope and ambition. Sometimes at night I would catch myself looking out over the skyline, remembering the girl I had been at the start of all this. I didn't mourn her. I honored her. Thomas never called again. But sometimes when I passed by the newsstand and saw his name on the tabloids, I smiled, not with bitterness, but with quiet satisfaction. He had left me with nothing. But I had walked into court with everything I needed. And that was something no one, not even Thomas, could take from me. Freedom is a strange thing. For so long I thought it would look like revenge, like watching Thomas collapse under the weight of his own arrogance, like seeing his name dragged through the mud, like standing in the rubble of everything he tried to build without me and feeling victorious. But freedom, I discovered, is quieter. It's walking through a grocery store without feeling like you're being watched. It's waking up in the morning without checking your phone for nasty messages or legal updates. It's sitting in a cafe with a book, hearing the soft clink of cups, the low hum of conversation, and realizing that your life belongs entirely to you again. And it's peace. The final legal proceedings went swiftly, given the mountain of evidence we'd brought to the table. Thomas's lawyers negotiated aggressively to keep criminal charges off the table, but the judge was firm. Financial misconduct, contempt of court, and fraud meant he had to cooperate fully with federal investigators. When I walked into the courtroom that last time, I barely recognized him. His once impeccable suits hung loosely on his frame. His carefully groomed hair was streaked with gray I'd never seen before. His eyes, once sharp and calculating, were bloodshot and vacant. As the judge signed off on the final order, Thomas didn't even look at me. And I realized he was already living in the prison he'd built for himself. The settlement was more than I had expected. Half of the assets, yes, but also compensation for the years of hidden income, the real estate, the stock options, the offshore accounts that Sophie's forensic team had uncovered. The media painted me as the woman who beat the system, but I didn't feel like a victor. Felt like a survivor. With Sophie's blessing, I donated part of the settlement to a women's legal aid group. I kept the house, not to live in but to sell. I wanted a clean break, one that didn't leave me tethered to the ghost of a life that was never really mine. And then, slowly, I began to stitch together the pieces of a new life. I enrolled in a teaching program, a dream I'd put on hold for Thomas, always telling myself later when things calmed down. Now there were no more excuses. My days became filled with lesson plans, workshops, and nights spent reading by the window. I reconnected with old friends, people who had quietly stepped back during the worst of it, unsure of where they fit into the mess, but who returned now with gentle apologies and open arms. And then there was the writing. For years I had kept journals tucked away, scraps of unfinished essays, outlines of articles I never had the nerve to pitch. Now, with nothing left to lose, I began sending them out. Slowly, to my astonishment, they were picked up, first by small magazines, then by larger publications. Editors wanted to hear my story. I became something I never expected. Visible. Months later I saw Thomas one last time. I hadn't planned to. I was walking through the park on an autumn afternoon, scarf wrapped tight against the cold, when I spotted him sitting on a bench. Alone. No lawyers. No girlfriend. No phone pressed to his ear. Just Thomas, shoulders hunched, staring at the ground as if the world had quietly shifted out from under his feet. For a moment I froze. 100 emotions tangled in my chest. Anger, pity, disbelief. And then release. He never saw me, and I never approached. Some doors are meant to stay closed. The biggest twist in my story wasn't the courtroom victory or the media frenzy. It was the realization that, at the end of everything, I had become someone new, someone I actually liked. I learned that power isn't in destroying the person who wronged you. It's in rebuilding yourself so completely that they no longer have any power over you. I learned that grief can live side by side with joy, and that healing doesn't look like triumph. It looks like quiet mornings, new beginnings, and the soft but certain return of hope. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I stood on a stage at a fundraiser for the women's legal aid group I had supported. As I looked out over the crowd, survivors, advocates, volunteers, I felt something tighten in my throat. I used to think, I told them, voice steady, that survival was about outlasting the people who tried to break you. But it's not. It's about remembering who you are when they're gone. The applause washed over me, warm and unsteady, and in that moment I knew. I had walked into court with something that shut everyone up. But the real victory was walking out, and never looking back. Sometimes late at night I still hear his voice, not in nightmares but as a faint echo, a reminder of everything I've left behind. And every time I smile to myself, pull the blanket tighter and fall back asleep. Because I have something now that he will never have again. A life built on truth, freedom and peace. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.